Jake,
Jason.
welcome to the show. So
Thank
excited to have
you.
you. Yeah, so excited to have you on today and for the audience to get to know you like I've gotten to know you. So let's get right into it because I know we have a lot of content to cover today because I think the two of us could probably talk for about 4 hours, but I think at some point our audience might get sick of hearing us talk.
Maybe.
And
Debatable, but we'll save them that just in case.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get right into it. So let the audience know who you are and we'll kick this off that way.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and dig into some stuff and see where it goes. I know you have questions, but I'd love to just, ad-lib it and see what happens. But
Sounds
anyways,
great.
we'll have plenty of time for that. I'm Jake Fishbein. I am a business and a personal coach. I help entrepreneurs, founders, and creative freelancers make value-driven choices and push their endeavors forward in purposeful and powerful ways. I'm also a writer. I've been working on a novel for 4 years about a men's group and men living authentically and trusting themselves. And just one other tidbit about me that is a fun fact, or maybe two. I love Greek history, and I am a Red Sox fan, like a huge, giant Red Sox fan. And I like to say that because I'm in the wrong city. But
that's funny.
I will never be converted to anything but the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, I've spoken about this in the podcast previously. I'm from Minnesota, so I'm a huge Minnesota sports fan. And do you know that the Minnesota Twins are 0-14 against the Yankees in the playoffs in the last 10 years?
I do.
Yeah.
I remember in the early 2000s when they played the Yankees, pretty sure it was 0-3 and 0-4 back-to-back, and the Yankees just creamed them both times. And then it happened again this year. So
yeah, thank you for this. This is
got the Twins number.
Yeah, very positive way to start this podcast. It's reminding me of my Minnesota sports lineage. I'm the same. People are like, "Oh, you lived in New York for 15 years now. Which New York sports teams?" I'm like, none of them. I hate the Yankees. I hate the Mets. I hate the Giants. I hate the Jets. I hate the Knicks. I like the Brooklyn Nets because they're new and they started after I moved here. But I'm the same way. I'm like a lifelong Minnesota sports fan. So enough about our sports thing. I always like to start the podcast after getting the interview on how we met, and I'll lead off on that. So Jake and I know each other. We met at a storytelling workshop here in New York, who's taught by a mutual friend of ours, Andrew. And so it was a storytelling workshop. It was a learning to be a better storyteller, whether you're doing public speaking, whether you're writing your stories, just a way to be more clear and articulate in your storytelling, which I'm not being that articulate right now, which is very ironic. So the next thing I always like to do, it's a time-honored tradition here on Talking to Cool People podcast, is give each other our first impressions of each other. And we haven't ever talked about this.
No, we haven't.
We haven't. So this will be this is always a fun and a little bit scary thing to do, but it generally works out well. So I like to always let my guests go first so you can get the uncomfortable stuff out of the way. So Jake, what was your first impression of me when we met?
Okay, well, let me dial it back because it was about a year and a half ago. But I remember being in the workshop, and I remember your exuberance and just how engaged you were. And obviously you knew Andrew, and there was all this talking back and forth. And I was sitting there oh, I feel kind of out of place. And then I remember in the middle of the workshop, you stepped out. I guess it was just to go to the bathroom. But I can be in my head and judgmental sometimes. And I remember thinking, oh my God, was this guy just so triggered by this workshop that he just got frustrated, upset, and left? And you're gone for a long time. And I just remember thinking that I was oh my God, what the hell happened? And then you came back. And so it's okay, well, that story that I made up was completely wrong. And then, I remember as we were leaving, you said you lived in Brooklyn Heights, and I lived in Brooklyn Heights too. And I remember thinking, whoa, this is a really cool guy, and I'm starting my business. And I don't know, this is someone who I would like to get to know and get to know better and hang out with. And I think Andrew gave me your email address, and then we ran into each other a few months later at WeWork, and it all kind of came together.
Yeah, no, that is hilarious. So I haven't shared this on the podcast, but I'll just share it right now. I have a deadly combination of I hate to be dehydrated and I have the world's smallest bladder.
I think we may be on the same wavelength there.
So yeah, the reason I was gone to the bathroom a long time is because I had to go to the bathroom nothing more nothing less. That's hilarious. That's so funny. Like, yes, I was so triggered by Jake and Andrew and the other people there that I just couldn't stand to be in the room anymore. And I had to go and clear and compose myself before stepping back in. I was so triggered.
Right.
No, that is hilarious. I am so glad we're doing this because I never would have known that otherwise. I don't think that's hilarious. So I will do the same for you. So I remember I'm an energy person. So I remember meeting you. I remember that you, for those of you who know Jake, some of you may meet him, or if you don't, we'll talk about how you can check him out later. Jake is a guy who just has the most genuine smile. So I remember your smile, and you smile a lot. And I remember that you look like a writer. Like when I think of a writer, you look like her. I'm like, oh, this seems like a very smart guy, very friendly, a lot of smiling. And maybe I was triggered because you were too nice. And I'm like, oh, I gotta go and find somebody who's not quite as nice. But what I remembered, like you said, it's been a while ago now. What I remember is that you were the energy that you put out is just so genuine and nice, which I know we're going to talk a lot more about that today. And what's been awesome about getting to know you is like how you show up the minute I met you is exactly how you are. Mm. And I don't think that's something you can say about everybody. So again, I just want to thank you for being on today and for being a friend, and excited to get to share with the audience all about Jake. So maybe that's the title of my next podcast, All About Jake.
Hey, I would be, if you want it to be, I'll be game.
I'll just interview Jake every week. It'll be fascinating. I'll try and make you cry.
It's not that hard.
Well, I know. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that today.
I'm sure we will. Yeah. Well, thank you. It's really cool to hear that. The way that I showed up the first time is the way that you continue to experience me. I know that in the past I've struggled with authenticity and like being myself, and I like to please people and want to be liked. And I think what I hear and what you're saying is, even though, that's a part of who I am, like I showed up genuine, and like, that's the person you see. And for me, that's really self-affirming. It's like, I'm doing something right. I am being authentic. I'm being myself, and I'm not faking it when I meet somebody just to get them to like me. So very cool to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, I'm happy to share that feedback with you. So let's get into it. First question I have for you, Jake. What's something that you nerd out about?
Okay, what's something I don't nerd out about? I think I'm like a total nerd. So I just go with the first thing in my mind. I mean, when I nerd out on personal development, transformational, how to live a better life, philosophical, all that stuff. But like truly nerd out about, since I was about 8, I've just loved ancient Greek history. Like I read the Odyssey. My parents read me the Iliad and the Odyssey when I was like 8 years old. And then I've read them, I don't know how many times since. In high school, I was determined to figure out what actually happened to inspire the Trojan War. So I read this big old book called The Kingdom of the Hittites and used tabs and highlighted, and I did it during school because I thought it would make me cool. It didn't, but it definitely was very me. And so I love history. I love Greece. I love the part of history where it's not known, where it is stories. Mm-hmm. And it's the Iliad and the Odyssey are such a big part of my life. And I nerd out about them a ton because I think when you've told a story for hundreds of years orally, it just contains so much truth about human nature and humanity. And for me, those stories, these myths, the legends that are told, the stories that people tell, just fascinate me because they tell us so much. And it's every time I read those books, I learn something different and I see it in a different way. And I've been doing that for 20 years now. So it's that is, I think, if we put my nerdness on a pedestal, that would be up at the top for sure.
I love it. So you just reminded me of the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The Coen Brothers movie, which is, if I'm not mistaken, is a modern, and so much I believe it takes place in the 20s or 30s, is a modern take on the Iliad, if I'm not mistaken. Have you seen the movie?
Yes.
Or on the Odyssey, the Odyssey. It's a more modern take on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. And I was about to embarrass myself and say, yeah, like I actually like mythology, but I'm like, oh yeah, I love Thor from Marvel. And I'm like, wait, but then I'm like, no, wait, Thor is Norse, right? He's a Norse
He's a
mythological
Norse god,
figure,
but the cool thing about mythology, whether it's like Norse or Greek or Egyptian or Indian or biblical, um, it's like there's so many common threads. It's like people are people, whether they're in Norway or Greece or Egypt or China or the Americas. It's like there's so many consistent stories. It's like I don't know Norse mythology that well, but there's a flood story in every single mythological backstory.
right?
Which,
Yeah.
there is this collective memory of something happening or representing something, which I think is super cool. So you can love Norse mythology and Thor from Marvel, and there's a connection with Zeus and all the
Yeah.
Olympian gods as well.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere as well, and I don't know if this is specifically related to mythology, that the dragon is is a mythological creature, is something that it's a creature that appears in almost all mythology in some way, and even when these would have been people that wouldn't have been connected to each other,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. And I think I'm also displaying the level of intelligence of Jake, speaking about literature, and then I related back to Marvel movies. It's amazing. Yeah, I like Thor. He was a really cool character with his hammer, and you're like, yes, I've read them all like 100 times. So that's the way it goes. Well, excellent. So that's cool. That's really cool. And I didn't actually know that about you. I've seen you post a couple things on social media about mythology, but I didn't know that was one of the things you're really nerded about. And it doesn't surprise me based on knowing what you do. So thanks for sharing all that with us.
Absolutely.
The next question I have for you is, love to hear about something that's inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's comfort zone. And I'm not going to allow you to say reading Greek mythology.
I won't say that. This is something that wasn't always inside my comfort zone, but has become very, I'd say it's become my comfort zone, but it's something that I'm comfortably uncomfortable doing. Which is I love to go on trips by myself. And I haven't done one for almost 2 years now, which is a little frightening. But I love to go away for a week by myself to go write. And last time I went up to Halifax, Nova Scotia for a week. I tell people I'm off the grid, no email, no texting, don't call me. I put my phone away and I spend the whole time with myself. Usually I end up going at a time where I'm working through something personally as well as working on literature. And so it's like this week of intense introspectiveness and creation and being out in the world alone. It's like I'll go out to dinner by myself and I'll go to cafes by myself and all things that didn't used to be comfortable for me. And now it's like that's a space where I actually feel totally authentically myself. Is when I get to be alone without technology's burden in a foreign place that I don't really know, with my notebook and a book and a higher purpose. And I don't think that's comfortable for a lot of people to let go of technology, for one, which it's not even comfortable for me. But two, to really go deep for a period of time in solitude. And it's just something that I have this strange mix of both introvertedness and extrovertedness that I love to be alone. And if I'm alone too long, I get depressed. And I love to be with people. And if I'm with people too long, I get exhausted. And so it's I can do that for a week and then I've got to see people. But while I'm there, I'm I could be here for the rest of my life. And it's not possible to have that level of intensity for longer than a week. And I've thought about pushing it to 2, but I don't know if that would even be possible. So,
yeah. Cool. So since we're on the themes of me relating everything you say back to movies, you sound like a living, walking Stephen King character.
I hope I don't go off the deep end. So
right. So you want to be Jack Torrance, or
I don't
from The Shining, or I forget his name in Misery, is also a writer. He's a writer.
I've never read Stephen King, so I have seen The Shining. I have seen it.
Yeah. Yep.
Times. Yeah, I hope I don't, go off the deep end and get nasty and lose my niceness and that all. But yes.
So Misery, Misery, the writer is fine. It's the person that he spends time with that is crazy. So you've got both. You've got the Misery thing, and then you also have the Shining thing. So
good. I can mix them both together and
exactly
be a mostly sane human being.
A mostly sane human being, which is good. I think that's a good way to describe most of us. Mostly sane.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So let's take the reverse of that question. So what's something that is outside of your comfort zone that's inside of other people's comfort zone?
So this is a really interesting one. I actually am really uncomfortable introducing myself to people. And I've noticed it over the years because I'm very comfortable with people, and I've spent a lot of time at big events and with a lot of people. Like my grandmother is very much into the arts, and I used to go to parties with her, and it was awesome. She would like introduce me to people, and I'd be able to have these amazing conversations. And recently I've noticed that if I go to somewhere by myself to a party or an event, like I'm so incredibly uncomfortable initiating those conversations. If someone introduces me, I'm like good to go. But if I have to introduce myself, it's like game over. I'd rather be in the corner on my phone than like working up the courage to introduce, even though once the barrier is gone, like I'm good. Mm-hmm. So like I know like you're someone who's, a super people person. Like I imagine, meeting people is something totally inside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Like meeting people is inside my comfort zone, but beginning the conversation isn't. It's like I get all in my head, and like as a coach, it's weird because it's like I get in my head about, do I ask this question? Like, I don't know if I can ask this. It's like I was hosting a workshop last week. Well, you were there, and before we arrived, one guy was sitting there, and he knows my business partner, and she walked out of the room, and we're just sitting there, and I'm like, I should probably make conversation, but I don't know what to say. And I was like, I can just ask like how he knows her, but I was like, doesn't feel like the right question, and so I just didn't say anything. And it's been an interesting thing for me to be noticing, which is like I put so much emphasis on like gotta ask the right question when like someone asks me something and I don't think 2 seconds about did they ask the right question. So it's like that's where my perfectionism comes in, and wanting to look good comes in, and just being uncomfortable with being seen in that way and putting myself out there in that way. It's always been a huge uncomfortable stretch for me.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to change this up. I'm going to throw out everything else we're going to do today. We're going to do a power coaching session with Jake around being comfortable that you're enough and you don't have to know the right way to do it, and just being yourself is enough. So enjoy, guys. We're going to spend 45 minutes and now I'm going to make Jake cry. No, we're not going to do that. We could maybe have that another time. I do have to point out something very ironic about this as well.
You can go for it. I'm all for the irony.
Yeah, you just had to introduce yourself to a group of people that you literally don't know on a podcast at the beginning of this podcast, which is directly the thing that you said is outside your comfort zone.
Oh yeah, but I was totally comfortable with that. It's bizarre. I'm like a walking bunch of contradictions, as I think we all are.
Yeah. Yeah, you sound like a human being to me.
Yes, I think so. I think that's safe to say.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing those with us. That was it was really cool to hear both of those, because I actually didn't know either of those two things about you either. And I don't remember when I met you feeling any sort of discomfort around the introduction, but it's possible it was there. I don't remember it. So maybe it's amplified in your own mind, which is again what we all do, right?
1,000,000%. Because I like my dad's often said, he's like talked to his friends and he's told me, he said, I'm good with people. I walk into a room like I can meet people, but I'm not like my son who can walk into a room and be best friends with everybody. And I'm like, wait, you're talking about me? Like, I'm really good with people, and I'm
Yeah.
able to get people to open up and have deep conversations and connect and, um, have that genuine, authentic experience. And at the same time, like, I'm in my head around it too. So
Hmm.
it is absolutely one of those things where I amplify my mind and make a big deal out of, like, way more than is necessary, because it's like, I know when I trust myself, everything's fine.
Yeah.
It's one of
Yeah.
those things where it's like, I like to tell people, like, people don't change. Like, all the conversations I've had all my life, like, they're still there. Like, they may be smaller or lighter or softer or bigger sometimes, but it's like, they're there, they're muted, they're on, they're off. And it's like, I'm the same person I was before. And even though I've evolved and shifted, and what I'm doing changes, but it's like, there'll always be some version of, oh my God, am I going to say the right thing? Um, and sometimes I'm going to trust myself 100%, and sometimes I'm going to trust myself 20%. And, like, that's the game of life.
Yeah.
Um, there's,
Yeah.
it's like, it's all of it. It's everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to name the title. The title of this episode is going to be Jake, Coaches Are Human Too.
It's super important to remember.
Super important to remember. We're all just human beings with the same stuff you've got. We just happen to have some more training, and some coaches have the ability to hold it and some don't. So that's a whole different discussion as well.
100%.
Well, let's move on to the next question. And the scenario for you is, Jake, you've got 5 minutes and you get to deliver a speech to the world. So you have the world stage, maybe you're at the UN or Geneva or something, and the world's watching you. And you get 5 minutes to deliver whatever message you want. What would you give your speech on, and why?
So, when I saw this question in your email, like, with the list of questions, I was like, okay, I want to
Mhm.
think about this one. I was like, what would I give this speech on? And I thought about, like, a variety of different things, like, how to live well, or, how we all have to stop wanting to be right all the time and be open to other people's perspectives. And, we have to join together and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, all of those things would be awesome. But when I really sat with it and thought about, if I really wanted to make an impact, I had 5 minutes to make an impact on the whole world, what would I want to communicate? And I think it comes down to I was going to say really simple sentiment. I don't think it's simple at all, which is talking about our purpose as human beings. And, I think for eternity, everyone, the great thinkers, have all questioned, why are we here? Like, why do we exist? And I remember, I think it was about 3 years ago, I was in Philadelphia at the art museum there, walking through the exhibit of these pictures of animals and the natural world. And I remember walked through for about an hour, and there was one image, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember standing in front of it and just being like, I know why we're here, which is like, our purpose is to live and preserve life, like, to protect life. Like, life itself is the most precious thing. I had this experience even before that of being in Central Park one day and looking at the trees and being like, seeing the leaves and just recognizing, wow, these leaves are alive. Like, they have the same life I do. They may not have conscious thoughts that I know of, but it's like, they're
Mhm.
alive. And it was like, well, what's God? God is life. Like, life is the most powerful thing in our universe in many ways. It's like, somehow on this planet, life exists. And, if I had 5 minutes to talk to the world, it would really be that. It's like, we get caught up in so many things: making money, having power. Like, is there global warming? Isn't there global warming? Which is absurd. But, like, we get caught up in the minutia and, like, our own significance, and we're like ants.
Mhm.
And, at the end of the day, we've been gifted with consciousness. And it's like, well, what are we supposed to do with that consciousness but ensure that life can survive? That, like, we are the stewards of life as human beings, our own lives, and the lives of the animals and plants and the flora and fauna of this planet. And it's like, our job is to ensure that life goes on. Simple as that, as
Mhm.
unsimple as that is. And, to live well and to be the stewards of life. It's like, why don't we wake the flock up, people? stop pretending that, we are the next gods. I was reading a notebook. I'm going through my old notebooks and transcribing them for Instagram posts, and reading this diatribe I wrote 6 years ago. I was reading this notebook and being like, oh my God, no wonder nobody wanted to be with me at that time romantically. I was like such a curmudgeon. But it's just like this diatribe on, oh my God, like I just want to see real nature. Like humans are destroying everything. Like we're building this new Tower of Babel, and like, what will we do when we're swept away? Like, will we catch ourselves before we're cast to the wind or not? And, I do think humans have this need or this drive to prove that we can create life.
Mm-hmm.
We are God. And it's like, I'm not terribly religious, so I don't even talk about that in a context of believing in a divine being. But I think we humans have this drive to create the Tower of Babel. And for me, it's like, no, like we're already alive. Like things are already alive. Like our job is just to make sure that things stay alive and that life is preserved. And I think if I could communicate that with the world, and I think if people could really sit with that and sit with the power of what actually exists already, and that we are alive and these things around us are alive, and for us to be here just to live well and to protect life, I mean, I think we live in a vastly different world. So that those would be my 5 minutes.
Yeah, that would be a game changer if humanity actually looked at it from that perspective and believed it. Like what's coming up for me when you're sharing that is like, how would I operate, and what decisions would I make differently, and what decisions do I currently make that are aligned to that? Realizing that my purpose here is to continue on humanity. Yeah, that's that. Thank you for giving me a lot to think about. That's just really cool, Jake.
You're welcome.
So now, this is the chance for you to share with the audience your journey.
Oh boy, do we have 10 years?
We have 10 years. Well, we have the 4 hours, like we said at the beginning. Or no, we decided not to do the 4 hours.
We decided not to do that.
Yeah. So this is your opportunity to share with us. Today we ended up here on the podcast today. Like, we know a little bit about you. You're a writer. You're a coach. You live in New York City currently. Love to just hear more about you, like your journey to what brought us here today, and anything you'd like to share with us about that.
Absolutely. So let me see. I think my journey, like all our journeys, begins before me. It's like my ancestors are all from Eastern Europe, and they came over in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And, I think their stories are linked to mine. I think we hold our ancestors inside of us. Their choices have shaped us, whether they're our parents, our grandparents, great-grandparents, and on and on and on. It's like my grandparents came over or my great-grandparents came over, like my dad's side of the family, they were in Rhode Island. My great-grandfather had been a Talmudist scholar in the Ukraine, in this town called Novosgrad-Volynsk. And he had a whole family there, but his sister fell in love with a Russian Orthodox man and went to convert. And so my great-grandfather and his brother stole her from the convent and came to America, leaving their whole families behind, and started new families in the United States. And, my dad's side of the family has always been very entrepreneurial, very much into music. And, after many, attempts at failed businesses, or attempts at businesses that failed, my dad succeeded in creating this coffee shop in Rhode Island, and then in turn a nonprofit that works with coffee farmers. And he's been doing that for 30 years. And I say all that because it is part of my story. And my mom's side of the family, my grandmother from New York, born in Brooklyn, raised in the Bronx, like absolutely adores the arts. When I moved to New York City in 2014, I lived with her for a year and a half, which was such a tremendous gift. And, my grandfather, his family was in the cardboard box business, or the corrugated box business, in Fall River, Massachusetts for many years. And he was an amateur photographer. And very like the arts is just, I think, on both sides of my family in different ways. And so I was born in Rhode Island, in Providence, in 1991. So there, everybody knows how old I am, which is not that old, but beginning to feel older than I'd like. And when I was a year and a half, my parents decided to move to New Mexico for a year just to like shake things up. And so we moved to Santa Fe when I was a year and a half. And now 27 years later, or 26 years later, they're still in Santa Fe. So I grew up in New Mexico, which growing up, I think having spoken to a lot of people, everybody kind of thinks of where they grew up as in the same way. Boring, there's nothing to do, blah, blah, blah. Maybe not kids who grew up in New York City, but, otherwise. And so I thought that way about Santa Fe, which in hindsight, Santa Fe was an amazing place to grow up. Quiet, peaceful, New Mexico has this certain magical air to it. Its nickname is the land of enchantment, although a lot of people call it the land of entrapment because people go there and get stuck and don't leave, like my parents. And so that's like the joke about the state, but there really is something beautiful about it. And I think I got to grow up with that in the background. So I went to a Montessori school growing up, which was like a big part of my foundation, because in Montessori, at least the school I went to, I got to do whatever I wanted. So if I wanted to write screenplays to learn things and plays, I could do that. If I wanted to study geography all day, I could do that. If I wanted to write book reports on Greek stuff, like I could do that. Like creativity was so nourished in that environment. It really set the foundation for my curiosity and my love of learning. And also this belief and this trust that like, if something interests me, I can go do it. I can go explore it. And that's followed me, since that time. And I credit a lot of where I am today with that learning environment of Montessori between first and sixth grade. Like I wrote plays there and I acted there and I got obsessed with Greek history there. And, then I went to a regular high school and I still was able to like nourish myself in those ways. So it's like, but it changed. It was like that transition was really hard academically. Even I got like terrible grades in seventh grade and, didn't really make many friends or, I made friends, but they were people like me who were, hadn't gone to the regular elementary schools with everyone else. But in high school, like that's when I really dove into Greek history. I got really into academics. I just love to learn. Like learning is, if you had to sum me up, I think like learning is one of those big things for me. So like my core values are learning, integrity, and creativity. And it's like, I think those things are just so, so, so important. And in high school, I started running track, and track became like the biggest part of my life for 8 years. I ran in high school and college and used track as an opportunity to learn too. An opportunity to get in touch with my body, an opportunity to be part of a team and to lead and to learn what it means to be a man in many ways.
What did you run in track?
I was a sprinter. So I ran the 100 and the 200, and in college I ran the 55 and the 60-meter dash, and then the relays. So I actually have several school records in high school and a couple school records in college. And
very cool.
When I went to college, they called me Fast Jake because of my times in high school. And
that's quite on the nose.
It was quite on the nose. And just very quickly after the track season began, that nickname went out the door. So Fast Jake was not so fast in college as he had been in high school. But track was like my social circuit, and just like all of my best friends in college, I met there. And it was just like this amazing environment of learning. And I had great coaches. I'm a coach now, and the coaches I had for track, not so much. I do credit them with leading me into this world in many ways. I actually considered becoming a track coach after when I was about to graduate and decided not to. But it's like what my coach at Kenyon. I went to Kenyon College, this tiny liberal arts school in the middle of Ohio. Like my coach, his name was Coach First. He just taught me so much about integrity and showing up and putting in the work and being willing to learn and the importance of relationships. And I think like my high school track coach, Tove, I mean, she taught me just like put your heart on the line, which was, I think, really big. And, you know, and how it feels to have somebody really be in your corner and believe in you.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So somehow, you know, after college, I graduated with no idea what the hell I wanted to do, which, you know, in coaching, we talk a lot about the stories we tell ourselves. And my story up until about a year and a half ago was, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I used to tell people, I'll figure it out sometime in the next 50 years, which was a nice way to get a laugh. And also a nice way to like make light of the fact that, oh my God, I'm so terrified. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, so I made my way to New York because I got a job here as a publicist. I didn't know what a publicist was, and I didn't know that I was a publicist when I took the job.
That's amazing.
So it was, you know, a combination. I remember I was a friend of a friend who gave me the job, and I remember calling him from Santa Fe, like still hemming and hawing, like, do I want to take this job? And I was like, what exactly am I doing? Like, what's the pay? And he was like, you know what? Like, this is what it is. Like, sometimes you just got to trust it and go for it. And I did. So that brought me out here. And I can't say I loved that job, but I learned so much in that job and really got exposed to the world in a new way. And my boss is someone I will be eternally grateful and appreciative of. And it also led me to where I am today because it wasn't the right world for me. And it was out of that job that I found myself around personal development and coaching. And I mean, like, I could tell my story forever because it's like there's so many different pieces. And I think the important one, like, two really important books besides the Iliad and the Odyssey that kind of put me on the trajectory I'm on now. One is this book, Zorba the Greek, by Nikos Kazantzakis, a Greek writer from the early 20th century. And there's also a movie called Zorba the Greek with Anthony Quinn and Alan Bates. And it's been a movie my parents, my grandparents have loved all my life. And so it's always been there, this movie, Zorba the Greek. And like, I watched it in elementary school and I was like, I don't know what the hell this is about. I don't understand it. I read the book in high school as a summer reading thing. And I was like, I don't understand this. And in college, when I was graduating, I decided to watch the movie again. And I did. And I was like, holy crap. I get it. Because it was so much about how to live and how to be present to life. It's a story about, on one hand, this guy named the Boss, who's a bookworm who lives in his books, who's a writer. And on the other hand, this guy named Alexis Zorba, who's a miner and a jack of all trades and an artist and a dancer. And, you know, their friendship, but also the lessons of Zorba of, like, you know, experience each moment like it's for the first time. Like, be present to where you are. It's the only time you have. Like, why spend time with your books? Like, you have the opportunity to live. Like, learn how to dance. You know, one of my favorite lines in the book and in the movie is at the end, when it ends in catastrophe, utter catastrophe. And Zorba looks at the Boss and he tells him, he says, you know, you have everything except for one thing. And the Boss says, well, what's that? And Zorba says, madness. He says a man needs a little bit of madness or else he never dares cut the rope and be free. And for me, like, I read it right after college and it just like transformed. It was like, oh my God, I want to live like this because I am the boss. I am stuck in my head. I am stuck in my books. I'm tethered to this rope of not being free. And it's funny. It's like over the years, whenever I've asked myself, what do I want? It's always to be free. And so it's like Zorba has been like I think kicked me off on this trajectory of like, how do I want to live? Like, what does it mean to live a good life? What does it mean to explore life? And how do I cut the damn rope and be free? How do I embody a little bit of madness? And, that took me to when I was here, I read this book called The Artist's Way, which someone recommended because had a lot of writer's block. And The Artist's Way is a book of coaching in a nutshell. It's to foster creativity, but it's filled with coaching questions and coaching homeworks and exercises. And it had me really be honest with myself, I think, for the first time in my life about many things. And about a year after that, I was finally serious about looking for a new job. And of a friend of a friend of a friend recommended I do a series of workshops and a hire career coach, out of a very specific company. And so, thank you to that person, but also thank you to me for trusting a random stranger and doing it. So I did the workshops and it transformed my whole life. I met the girlfriend I was with for 4 years in those workshops. And I ended up calling the career coaching agency in the midst of them. And the guy who called me back, this guy, Nick Papadopoulos, happened to be Greek. Randomly Greek. He became my first coach. And he and I have been collaborating together ever since. So we're working on a novel together that I mentioned at the beginning about men living authentically and trusting themselves. Now we're running panel discussions about men and vulnerability and men and authenticity. I've been in his men's group for 4 years, and we're going to be doing a men's leadership weekend on March 28th and 29th of 2020.
Nice.
About being in the arena and how do you be a man in the arena and go through life with an unstoppable mindset? And really, what does it mean to be a man today in 2020? So it's for me, my life shifted when I took those workshops and ended up getting a call back from Nick. And, since then I've been on this path of coaching. I didn't lean into it for a couple of years. I co-founded a vinyl company in that meantime. With a
vinyl, like just making vinyl for random things, or vinyl like records?
Vinyl records.
Okay. Got it. So you're following the trends, and you're following the anti-trend.
Following the anti-trends. Yeah, it was really funny. I was unemployed for a bit, and I was really stuck. And there was this app called Planted, which it's like Tinder for startups. You would swipe if you liked it and it would submit your resume. And I got this call back for a part-time general manager position with a record label. And I was like, I don't know jack shit about music, but you know what? I should practice interviews. It wants to interview me. Okay. So I went, and he offered me the job the next day. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take the freaking job. And he and I just really, his name's Brad Hammonds, one of the most wonderful men that I know. And we just got along so well. And he really he's a musician. He's got this viral band now called Brass Against, which you should 1,000,000% check out. It's amazing. And I couldn't
Brass sound. I like the name. It's cool.
Yeah, they do cover songs of Rage Against the Machine and Tool and all that, but a brass band, and it is epic. And I couldn't be more proud of Brad. But he wanted to make this Vinyl of the Month Club. It was a new craze, and so we collaborated and built this Vinyl of the Month Club called Experience Vinyl. We partnered with these epic musicians like Carlos Santana, who chose their favorite records, which we pressed, and it was super cool and cost way too much money and was way too unwieldy. And so we shut it down. Although it is kind of coming back now under new leadership. And, it was out of that, Experience Vinyl shutting down and finishing a draft of the book that I once again found myself sitting on my couch, depressed, uncertain, feeling completely lost, being like, what the hell am I doing?
You can swear.
What do I want to do? Okay, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, you can swear.
I'll just censor myself.
I'll just know that the way it works is I just check the explicit box when I upload the podcast, and we're good to go. You be you, Jake.
Awesome. Well, I was sitting there, what the fuck am I going to do now? And I remember, I think over the years, I'm able to coach myself a little bit now. And I just remember thinking, okay, what is it that I do? Like, let's stop with the stories. Like, what is it that I do? And I was like, okay, I write and I coach. It's time to stop pretending that I don't know. And from then on, I've just leaned all in into coaching and writing. And here I am, certified with clients, building out workshops and programs. And, that brings me here today for the most part. I mean, I could keep talking forever and ever, but that's like the gist of things. I mean, I'm co-founding it, like building another company called Revel&Awe now with a business partner where we run workshops on work-life balance and personal branding. And we're going to be doing some experiential workshops in the spring. And it's like, it feels like such a fruitful time out of, a lot of confusion and feeling lost. And I mean, that I could talk about that for another 4 hours. So yeah, there's my story in a nutshell, or a very large nutshell.
Right. I hope I'm not stealing your words of wisdom, but something you said there right at the end, I feel like this is, you and your business partner can take this and pay me a percentage of your profits if you'd like. Stop pretending you don't know.
Yeah.
Like this, like you got this story and you got these things you're good at. And you're like, not only am I good at it, but I really like doing it.
Yeah.
And it feels aligned to what I want to put out in the world. And then you run it in. The reason this resonates for me is I've been there too. You're like, yeah, but I have no, this is a common thing in the coaching world with clients, is like, I don't know. Sometimes yes, and sometimes stop. And I'm taking Jake's words here, so I'll pay you a commission if people like that and want to somehow monetize this saying, but like, stop pretending you don't know. I think that's such a valuable lesson for people to think about it. I'm thinking about where in my life I'm pretending I don't know. I've got some that I will not share today, but maybe in the future I will.
All the time. Yeah. No, it's, in the men's group I'm in, we have our ground rule, which is you can't say, I don't know. And one of the reasons for that, and I believe it too, and I try to use it in my coaching, is something in every single moment. So it's like, you know what? I don't know how to change a flat tire. I don't know how to do it. But you know what? I know that I don't know how to change a flat tire. And I know that it makes me anxious to think about getting a flat tire and having to change it. And it's like, if someone asks you a question, like, I don't know, it's like, well, what do you know about that thing? And maybe that you're uncertain. Or like, I feel both things. Like, I don't know. For me, it's not really an acceptable answer because something. And I think part of the business of noticing and building awareness is, what do you know? And that's not to disqualify. It's like, sometimes you don't know things. Sometimes you don't have the answer.
Of course.
But sometimes that you don't have the answer. It's different to say, I don't know, versus I know that I don't have the answer right now. Like, it actually creates it. You like have more ownership and power when you own it versus just, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know what to say. It's like, I'm not comfortable saying what I want to say. Very, very different.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, your story is amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. You've obviously moved around the country, went to school in Ohio, grew up in New Mexico. Your family of origins from, like you said, from Eastern Europe, New York City, moved to New York City. You've done a bunch of things that you didn't know how to do, which I think there's a lesson for us there. Like, I was a publicist. I don't know how to be a publicist. I'm a GM, part-time GM of a final of the month company. I have no idea how to do that. And you did it anyway. So I think that's super cool. And I'm inspired to hear your journey. So getting near to the end of the time here, I still have a few more questions for you if you are willing to partake with me.
Absolutely.
So what's the thing in all of that, or overall in your life, that you're most proud of?
So I've been thinking about this a lot. And if I cry here, this would be the spot.
Do it.
Do it. So as I mentioned, I was in a relationship for 4 years. I mean, it was my first really serious relationship, and it was a 4-year beautiful relationship. And we completed our relationship. I just use her name. Well, who I was with, I hate the term ex, like ex-girlfriend. I hate it. But anyways, I completed that relationship about 3 months ago. And, the thing I'm most proud of in my life is that relationship and how I and she, how we completed it together. Because for me, it was a real lesson in, the power of intention and the power of choosing who to be. Like, she's someone I still love and respect a huge amount. And, we reached a point where we were both really stuck in our relationship. And I'm proud of myself for speaking up and saying, I can't do this anymore. And like taking care of myself, which is something that I struggle with. And I'm proud that, we didn't just cut things off. There wasn't this big blow up fight. It's like we really talked about it and we're honest with each other. And I think for the first time in a while, we left everything on the table. Like, we didn't leave anything unsaid. And it took us about a month to transition out of our relationship. We took a few days together, like mourning and being with it and seeing like, what choice do we want to make? And I took a week alone to like sit with, what do I need to do? And I just knew, I was like, if we don't end it, it'll be something I always regret not doing. Like, it was something that I needed to do. And we had a dog together and we lived together for 3 years and our life was very intertwined. And there were a lot of moments in the whole process of trying to figure it out where I wanted to throw my hands up in the air and be like, fuck this. Like, I don't want to deal with any of this. But for me, one of the things that's super important and what it means for me to be a man is to be honorable and to be respectful and to be loving and to be kind and to have integrity. And I just kept my eye on those things in the midst of what's one of the hardest things a person can go through, which is a breakup and a loss of something really significant and important. And I credit her with, being those same ways. And we had the most beautiful breakup that you could possibly have. I think our relationship is better now than it was for a long time because of how we went through that transition and how we mourned together and how we celebrated and honored the beautiful thing that we had. And, I couldn't be more proud of that because, at the end of the day, my life is about the relationships I have. It's not about the business I run or what I do or the books I've read. It's about the people that are a part of my life and that are and have been. And it's like, if I were to get hit by a bus now, it's like I'd be complete because there's no other way I'd want to treat somebody and treat a situation and be with a situation than the way that I did that. And I've been working on a novel for 4 years, and I'm super proud of that. And I did I'm proud of everything I did in track, and like proud of reading the Odyssey a million times, and like it's independent study I did, and my bar mitzvah, and like the relationship I have with my parents and my brother and with Nick and my friends. And I'm proud of all those things. And I'm just super proud that in a situation that could get really messy and did get really messy, that, I left things better than I found them.
Yeah. I don't believe many people who've gone through a breakup would be able to say that. Maybe over time, but it sounds like you and your partner were intentional in the process itself. But I think that is incredibly inspiring and incredibly mature. So I'm just thinking back, like I've been married for 10 years now, so it's been a while, but I did not end my relationships that way. I think the best way to put it is I doused them in gasoline and put the match on them.
Yeah.
And we both walked away scarred and Yeah. So
It's,
proud of you, man. That's
thank you.
cool.
It's something I've thought about a lot because I was not in a serious relationship before that, but I left several relationships scarred and battered and was not who I wanted to be. Not that I knew who I wanted to be. And something I've been really connected to, having gone through this in the last few months, and how hard it was and how fulfilling it was at the same time, is that there is an opportunity for people to be different in how we complete relationships.
Yeah.
Like the one thing that's guaranteed in life is loss. We'll lose everything. Lose in the last second. We're going to lose the people who are closest to us because we all die. Relationships end. And we have a lot of rituals around loss and celebration. It's like you graduate college, like that's a huge loss. Well, you have a party, you celebrate. Someone passes away, you have a funeral. There's a ritual around it. And there are rituals around breakups. You know, eat a tub of ice cream, go out and get crazy drunk, but for me, it's like I felt like how my partner and I, how we completed was a real ritual and really healthy that allowed both of us to move forward. And it's not like it wasn't painful. My God, it was the most painful, hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it's because of that and because of how intentional and focused we were on creating a certain experience that we did it. And I really do believe when someone is committed enough, like that's what can happen inside of a transition. And, you know, I credit her a lot because it's not possible if she didn't bring that same intention. But I think we can be different as a society around loss. And about respecting and honoring. It's like relationships are beautiful things. It's like I haven't deleted the photos of her off my phone, and it's because it's like I want to, like, it's a big part of my life. It's not, I'm not holding on to anything. Just like I'm not going to delete it and pretend it didn't happen. It happened and it was beautiful and it was important. And it's like, and I'm now in a different space and I'm moving forward and doing different things. But it's still, it's like it's part of my story. Not one I have to be angry about.
So what I hear in all that is creating from a place of possibility and abundance, not from lack and from there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with the other person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for being vulnerable. I'm sure that was a bit emotional to share, and I'm sure the audience will appreciate hearing that, because, you know, that's just something, like you said, we all go through breakups and we lose loved ones, and just a really different way and unique, inspiring way to look at it.
Thank you.
So we're going to move into the lightning round here.
I know. Sorry, I can be a little long-winded.
Not a problem. You're a writer and a coach and a speaker. There's no surprise that speaking comes naturally to you. Lightning round. What's something you're afraid of that might actually be true about you?
Okay, the first thing that came to my mind is that I'm full of shit. Like, sometimes I speak and I'm like, do I actually believe that? Is that actually true? Am I just regurgitating information I've heard? So I think in line with that is that, you know, something that I'm afraid might be true about myself is like that I'm inauthentic and that I'm full of shit. And that, you know, I'm hiding something, which is a constant fear of mine, of like being found out and being seen. It's really about being seen. It's like actually sharing that whole story. It's like, oh my God, like what if she listens to this? Like what if somebody else listens to this? It's like, have I said everything that's going to keep everything nice and neat? And it's like, you know, it's really just a fear of being seen and being vulnerable. And so I think, you know, what I'm afraid might be true is that I have something to hide and that I'm hiding it.
Yeah. Awesome, Jake. It has been amazing to talk to you today. I've personally so inspired right now. I loved hearing about your journey and all the things you shared with us today. So, you know, if the audience wants to learn more about you, connect with you, where can they find you?
So they can go to jakefishbein.com. That's JAKEFISH. B as in boy, E as in elephant, I as in icicle, N as in Nancy.com. Or I'm on Instagram at the Coach Jake. So guys can find me there. My email address is jake@jakefishbein.com. So
Cool.
super easy. And Jason, thank you. This has been so much fun. If there's ever an opportunity to do this again, I would be so game.
Yeah.
But also would love to have the opportunity to have, you share as well, to create that space.
That is, yes, that is something that is on the radar for me to be interviewed in the same way that I interview everybody else. So we're going to wrap here with the same way we wrap every time. Jake, leave us with one or two sentences, some words to wisdom. And it's going to be hard because you've given us so much wisdom already, and it's probably going to be hard for you to do in one or two sentences, but I'm creating a mini breakthrough for you right now.
Okay.
Words of wisdom, one or two sentences for the audience.
Okay. Enjoy where you are. I mean, it really is the only moment you have, because it will be gone in the next moment. So, find the opportunity to ask yourself what you're doing. It's like right now I'm closing out this podcast with Jason. It's like, well, close it out well. Like, just be excellent in what you're doing in that moment, because it is all you have. And enjoy. Like, we have life. Enjoy it. Find a way to enjoy it. Even the shitty things, you can enjoy it. I think that's how to live. Find the joy. Dance. And words of wisdom, go watch Zorba the Greek. You won't regret
it. Thank you so much for being on today, Jake. It was an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Jason. My pleasure was all mine. This was so much fun. Loved it.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with me, Jason Frizzell. Enjoyed today's episode? Please tell your friends, give us a shout out and a follow on Facebook and Instagram, and take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes. If something from this episode has piqued your interest and you'd like to connect about it, please email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners.